Good morning, you are very welcome along to Ireland AM on Virgin Media 1.
You are. It's Monday the 27th of November, and as you can see, Alan Hughes was working hard all weekend, our little elf, putting up all the Christmas decorations. Oh God, he's a trooper.
He's some man putting up the decorations.
Such a trooper. Here's what's coming up on today's show.
Yes, it is very Christmassy around here. We're loving it. Now, coming up later, we've got a roundup of all the weekend sports for you, including the latest from the Premier League. And of course, that magnificent win for Katie Taylor at the weekend. But it's all on the high.
Yeah, absolutely. Some good news there. We are obviously going to be talking about the riots that happened in Dublin last week as well.
And also, we're going to hear the latest documentary which details the events around the Kerry Baby case that shocked the nation back in the 80s.
Absolutely fascinating. And there he is. He's so tired after his
Little
weekend.
elf.
Putting up all... Hi, elf.
Oh, my hands are worn to it.
Are you, yeah?
Now, we have got some winter looks for fewer books and some celeb gossip coming up a little later on. But look who's here.
Oh, here she
Bright
is.
and early this morning, Catherine Layden's in the kitchen. What are you making for us, Catherine? She loves coming in this early, don't you?
I do in my wheels.
There you go.
Not even for
Good morning, Ireland.
Good morning, Ireland.
What are you
I'm
making
making
for us?
a sun-dried tomato and fennel bread, and we're going to serve it with a bit of some tomato soup. Tomato soup.
Oh, we're having a little bowl of soup
Yes,
as well.
yeah. I thought you'd like that to warm you up this morning.
Tommy, we'll be well fed today.
Yeah.
Looking forward to that. Now, Derek is getting into the festive spirit early this morning. Where are you, Derek?
Yes, good morning, Anne. We're live up the Dublin Mountains here this morning. It's a damp, drizzly, misty, and as Catherine mentioned there, a bit of a chilly start out there this morning. Now, good deal of cloud cover across the island, and in fact, a very cold night in store with valleys back to -1 to -2 degrees to kickstart the last full week of November. Now, Glenasmall Valley is where we're at this morning, the Valley of the Thrush, and we're down here at the Anderson Christmas Tree Farm. Coming up later on this morning, we are helping you to pick that perfect tree. So if you've got a big house or a small apartment, we have got you covered here later on this morning. It's that time of year, guys. Back to you in studio. Loving the decorations, by the way.
It's time now to take a look at this morning's papers. We'll start with the Irish Times. Its headline, Gardaí plan large-scale arrests of Dublin riot ringleaders. Senior Gardaí have promised large-scale arrests in the coming weeks as Commissioner Drew Harris and his senior officers are under pressure from the government to make rapid progress in the investigation.
Energy discount war heats up as another firm cuts bills. Competition has returned to the energy market with a cut-price electricity rate being announced by a supplier. New player UNO Energy is offering a fixed rate that is 5% cheaper than its previous lower rate. That's the front page of the Irish Independent.
The Examiner leads with facial recognition gets fast track. The government is to fast track and expand controversial new laws to help quell riots and disorder as it deals with the fallout from last week's violence in Dublin.
Similarly, on the Daily Mail, new facial recognition measures to help take on the rioters. Justice Minister Helen McEntee, who has insisted she will not resign despite increased pressure on her to quit, said the new laws will be ready for approval within weeks.
The Mirror goes with in safe hands. Irish-Israeli girl Emily Hand, who turned 9 whilst in captivity, ran into Dad Thomas's arms on Saturday night following her release. It was beautiful to watch.
Yeah, amazing. The Sun also leads with this story. Emily came back to us. The father of freed Hamas hostage, Emily Hand, has said, we are overjoyed to embrace Emily again, but at the same time, we remember all the hostages who have yet to return.
And the Star covers this story with safe in her daddy's arms.
And finally, the Herald goes with video shows knife panic in city shop. A video of a man threatening supermarket staff with a knife is being shared online after the riots in Dublin last week.
It's actually terrifying. I was watching that over the weekend and just going in and taking a knife out, and they were just doing their jobs. Unbelievable. And coming up after the break, the violence in Dublin City last week, we're going to be discussing it, and we just saw on the front of the papers, the government is now fast-tracking facial recognition. What do you make of this?
A little bit too little, too little, too late. Let us know what you think of it. 0896 111 111. Stay with us for more on that story. Very welcome back. Now, violent scenes unfolded in Dublin city centre last Thursday evening after what was a frightening attack on 3 children and 1 adult outside a school on Parnell Square led to an outbreak of riots, looting and destruction.
Joining us to discuss the incident and the rise of the far right in Ireland is President of the Garda Representative Association, Mark O'Mara, and Senior Analyst for the Institute of Strategic Development, Aoife Gallagher, who tracks what's happening online. And Aoife, we'll talk to you in a minute. But first of all, Mark, we're a few days out from this now, and obviously we have seen so many things that happened online. There was criticism of the Gardaí on Thursday night itself, which I'm sure was very disheartening for people who were on the ground trying to contain this. Do you think we're prepared enough for what's happening with these very organised far-right activists in Ireland?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose to start, Muireann, I'd just like to commend the bravery and professionalism of our members who were on duty that night and those who were drafted in to try and regain some semblance of order to the streets of our capital, and also this morning to, offer our support and prayer for those that are still in hospital injured after the events of Thursday evening. Members arrived at the scene of a tragic accident in Parnell Square, and sometime after that, other crowds began to gather at the cordoned area. And while they tried to keep that cordon, to protect that scene for evidence, the rioting, the violence, the looting extended down O'Connell Street and into the city centre. So the units were drafted in from neighbouring divisions to try and assist in regaining control of the city, and which they did. And in fairness, we have to pay tribute to them and to their professional dedication for attending at very short notice. But it is something that we have, as an association representing our members, been crying for some time in relation to proper resourcing, both in numbers, equipment and training for those members. We submitted or made a submission to the Justice Committee some months ago, specifically outlining our concerns in relation to public order and rioting and the suitable training of our public order members. And we highlighted that, but it appeared to fall on deaf ears. We were told the streets were safe.
So we're talking about to the Justice Committee, and we're talking about the Minister, Helen McEntee, here. Do you have confidence in herself and Drew Harris?
Well, in relation to the Commissioner, our position is quite clear on that. We took the decision after much debate back in September to ballot our members in relation to a vote of confidence in our Commissioner based on a host of issues. Unfortunately, and I say unfortunately, those issues came to reality on Thursday, a number of those issues. And that is to do with the resourcing, training and safety, the oversight mechanism that we feel is too stringent on our members. It affects how they will implement their duty on a day-to-day basis. In relation to your second question in relation to the Minister, that I believe would be inappropriate for us to discuss at this time. It's not for us to discuss that.
Listen, it is something that we've discussed on this show so many times about Dublin city centre, how we're told repeatedly that it is safe, but we're seeing disaffected youth getting away with petty crimes openly on our streets. Aoife, you were part of a study looking at social media, and I think there's 13 million posts across 12 different social media outlets. So we have obviously a lot of people who've been getting away with petty crime for a long time in Dublin city centre. We've also the rise of the far right here, which seemed to instigate and really add fuel to the flames in this.
Yeah, absolutely. It was actually this day last week that we released that report, which is kind of crazy timing. But yeah, I mean, it's a substantial piece of research, and we essentially tried to look at the activity of what we call the online mis and disinformation ecosystem in an Irish context. So it's a selection of, I think, over 1,600 accounts across 12 platforms that have a history of posting some kind of false information. And one of the key findings from that really were that this ecosystem is growing, that essentially across nearly every metric we looked at across all platforms, we see increased numbers of accounts, increased numbers of posts, increased numbers of engagements in those posts. But we also found that often it is individuals and groups associated with the far right in Ireland that are leading that charge. So that was one of the key findings.
What sort of misinformation and disinformation are we seeing? Because I certainly, like talking to people, it filters its way through certain social medias, that it gets to a thing and you're like, but that's not true. What's going on? Like, what are we seeing?
I mean, we looked at different topics, I suppose, within this ecosystem. Some of the most substantial one, because we looked at posts from the start of 2020 up until March 2023, so it's a very long period of time. So we looked at even the COVID era, but we're also looking very substantially at immigration. One of the biggest, one of the other findings, I suppose, that we found from that report was that since COVID, the kind of online communities that were set up to discuss like lockdowns and masks and vaccines and things like that have now become conduits for anti-immigrant misinformation, anti-LGBTQ disinformation, climate change denial. Do you know what I mean? So they just essentially, yeah, any kind of conspiratorial narrative.
I suppose. We can see it having real-world effects now, Mark. Because I was watching this on Thursday. I remember we were texting, and I was like, you can already see online on Telegram that it's 1:30. They're organising to go there. So rather than saying like this is a community who have been disaffected, these are people all over the place, middle-class people who are getting involved in all this. You can't think. So are the guards tackling the far right enough? Are you in the online space? Are you tracking them?
Well, I suppose, Muireann, to be fair, that would be an operational policing matter, and it's very difficult for me to comment on that. My remit really is to represent the welfare of our members. But
were you holding off the far right a bit? Like there has been lots of talks about, there's a place burned out in Ruski. There have been in Clare, when people go out, there have been lots of protests around places where there could be refugees housed. And it's been a policy of, OK, let's just hold off.
Well, I mean, the GRA is an association representing its members. We have highlighted, as you say, the incident in Clare, our refugees and our asylum seekers in Dublin who their tents were burned out. The assault on our tourists, the general increase in antisocial behaviour. We have been highlighting those and highlighting the fact that more funding, more training, more resourcing and more equipment, up-to-date equipment is needed. I mean, we speak about body-worn cameras and fast-tracking body-worn cameras for our members. Like, we welcome that. But since 2016-17, I've been involved and went to neighbouring jurisdictions to receive briefings in relation to body-worn cameras. I mean, we're almost December 2023, and we're still now talking about fast-tracking legislation. I mean, we can't have sound bites. We have to make it real.
Is there confidence out there to be a guard? Listen, we're seeing how difficult it is to recruit guards at the minute, but there was a lot of questions at the weekend wondering, well, why was there not a little bit more excessive force? But the guards are in fear of being disciplined, isn't there? There's one guard who's currently being
a case before the DPP because of that driving
because of manslaughter of pursuing a burglar. So is there a fear for the guards out there to actually go out there and be a little bit more heavy-handed for the fear what could?
I mean, there is that concern, clearly. I mean, we have a situation where members, they face, as I say, the excessive oversight in many ways. And we appreciate oversight and discipline, but there is self-discipline as well. And I mean, when we hear comments such as where there is no discipline, there is indiscipline, which our Commissioner used, I think that's a little bit harsh, and it shows a following of policy and implementation of policy that makes it very difficult for guards to have confidence to affect the enforcement of law on the streets. When they fear that they may be disciplined, they may be suspended, arrested, prosecuted, dismissed. These are huge decisions, But on the night in question, we must also bear in mind that there was a group of youths. We saw the image of the guard who was separated and isolated. And I would say that was a controlled, designed effort to isolate him on the bridge of O'Connell Street, or O'Connell Bridge, rather. And it was very difficult for him to defend himself, and to draw his baton at that point could have been counterproductive for his safety as well. Yeah. What we did see was the moment that reinforcement came back into him, he seemed to regain control again. And that's where we would always cry out that you need that backup, those numbers, those resources and training.
Absolutely. Eve, can I just ask you quickly as well, we were talking about the guards, their resources. Are we doing enough to the social media platforms to stem out this drive of rhetoric and either far right, far left, whatever else? Because at the minute it seems to be people just fed more stuff that is just fueling them again.
Yeah, I mean, things are just getting worse, I think, from a social media perspective. It really, again, one of the key findings of our report is that, I mean, the platforms have very detailed policies about this. Yeah. The mainstream platforms have policies saying this is not prohibited, but they're not enforcing these policies. There's no accountability from the platforms.
And they don't have to. You've got Elon Musk saying the Irish Prime Minister hates the Irish.
Yes, exactly.
What?
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, I think that anyone who was looking at Twitter on Thursday evening as that was playing out was so aware of how it was being weaponised and how that was being used to mobilise people onto the streets as well. It's a very, very big issue.
Listen, we'd love to get your opinion on this at home. 0896 111 111. Are we doing enough with the social media side of things? Are we doing enough to resource the Gardaí? We'd love to get your opinion on it. Mark O'Mara, Vice President of the GRA, thank you so much for joining us. And Aoife Gallagher from ISD's Digital Analysis Unit. Brilliant to have you with us.
Coming up, we'll have the date. Welcome back. Now, unsurprisingly, several of the front pages this morning cover the reunion between 9-year-old Emily Hand and her family after 50 days in captivity. It's a good news story that we wanted to hear. Emily was taken hostage by Hamas on October the 7th.
Yes, and here with that story and everything else this morning, it's Lorcan Nahan from the Communications Clinic. Good morning to you, Lorcan, and obviously great news about Emily, but then we had the controversy over Leo Varadkar's tweet. So can you fill us in?
Yeah, so brilliant news, positive. Leo Varadkar came out with a statement saying, similar, that it was positive, but he quoted scripture within his statement. So Luke 15:11, and he alluded to it by saying, "Was lost and now is found." Luke 15:11, prodigal son, effectively, thought it was dead, wasn't, lost, was found. That was the sentiment behind it. Poetic scripture. Nobody can have any reasonable issue with it. And yet there has been a lot of unreasonable issues with it. So the Israeli Foreign Minister Eli Cohen tweeted saying, "Mr. Prime Minister, it seems you have lost your moral compass and need a reality check." The idea being that this little girl was not lost, she was captured. But Leo Varadkar has been very, very clear in that he has condemned Hamas consistently for the taking of the hostages. So you can try to go into the statement and start analysing it, saying, oh, was it too ambiguous, or was it the wrong scripture? But when it comes to it, when there's a willful misunderstanding on the other side, you can't then, because of the reaction, start trying to apply logic to it. They're purposefully misunderstanding. In order to critique, would be my view on it, and therefore I don't think you can critique the statement. It was an attempt to capture the moment. I think it was a valid attempt to capture the moment, and I think that's all we should be saying about it. What's happened since, obviously, is Israel have called in the Irish ambassador to Israel to justify it, to answer for the remarks.
Seemingly they've called in the Spanish and the Belgium ambassador as well, so they're not happy with a few people.
Yeah, and if you look at the countries that perhaps are not happy with it, might not be about the statement, it might be about other positions they've
Their political stance on the issue of what's happening in Gaza. Yeah, so that's what we can do. Leo's fine about this. People are...
And he says himself, he says, I think he thinks that most people understood what he meant. Put out the full statement where he said other things.
Let's move on to what's to the fallout of the Dublin riots, and we'll first of all look at Drew Harris and Helen McEntee. So Minister for Justice, obviously, there's a lot of people are very angry at her and her reaction to what happened on Thursday night.
Yeah, and look, that's it. We're moving into the fallout stage, into the what happened, what could we have done better, etc. And there's a whole host of issues going on. So the pressure is obviously mounting on Helen McEntee and on Drew Harris directly as well. So there's going to be a no confidence motion in Helen McEntee.
Sinn Féin are tabling it.
Sinn Féin are tabling it. So not all the opposition are calling for her to resign, but the Social Democrats and Sinn Féin are, and there's a no confidence motion. There's so many different disparate issues to be looked at here that it's actually almost quite hard to explain, because you need to look at the initial reaction on the day to the specific unrest. Could it have been quicker? Could it have been better intelligence? Could they have had maybe a better action plan in place, so that one of the things that's been cited by individuals is the riot gear is all in Santry, it's not an individual station, so therefore it's harder to get to it. So even things like that, the initial tactical response needs to be looked at. You then need to look at the wider policing of the far right and agitators.
Well, yes, that's the thing,
and it's been alluded to that there was a softly policing approach decided. That's probably on the Commissioner and on the leadership there. Was that right? Where we obviously had, we had incidents in the last 6, 9, 12 months and further back that maybe pointed us towards this. The Cork Library being shut down by protests is one that's often been cited. And should that have been a sign that actually we're getting the approach slightly off here, and that this was then inevitable? And then wider again, you've got the fact that it's very hard to respond to these things when you don't have enough guards. That's a wider government issue, where how they've put money into hiring the guards, but you can't get people to do the job, and therefore is it paying conditions?
Why would you
what is
choose
it?
to do that when you're like, okay, so I won't be able to get a mortgage because, you know, it's too expensive to get a house in this country and I'm going to put myself on the line like this? There's lots of issues.
There's a huge amount of issues, and it goes from the tactical right up to the strategic. On a political level, the no confidence motion, there's an astute analysis in the Irish Times by Jack Horgan-Jones, which I think he's right, where he says that actually sometimes no confidence motions help the minister who's under pressure because it brings it all to the fore.
Yeah.
They win the vote.
They
'cause
win the vote, and then it all dies down.
And it's decided that actually, sure, they face no confidence. There's confidence. Let's move on. So I think that was a good piece of analysis.
What she has said is that she's going to fast track this controversial, which we've been talking about for a while, this facial recognition technology.
Yeah, so they've been working on that legislation for the past number of months. And look, on a very simple level, what it will allow them to do is there's 6,000 hours of CCTV footage of Dublin here. It allows them to scan, not have to scan through every bit of that, but say, we know who we're looking for. Facial recognition, find who we're looking for. So it's probably, it's a good example for those who want that to come in, that right now we have this use, it can be retroactively applied, and it can really help the police.
You're not going to have much opposition from the public, but there are civil liberties issues, but we do want to catch these people. And we're hearing today that families and friends are indeed contacting the Gardaí going, I know who that is.
I know who it is.
Yeah. I've seen the footage. I've seen the footage on social media. I don't agree with what they did. They shouldn't have been involved in ringing the confidential hotline and saying, that's who this is.
It is. And there is going to be, and they're determined that there will be hundreds of arrests over the next coming weeks.
Yeah.
And they will clamp down on this, I'm sure. Like, this will be the thing that they will really go to town on.
And look, anybody who's been around Dublin since...
it's shocking.
Thursday.
I mean, I feel sorry for we were just talking about for the retailers in Dublin. Black Friday supposed to be one of their busiest days. The restaurants, the pubs. Dublin was empty.
So many people cancelled big kind of start of Christmas plans, and it's awful for the retailers. But look, there has been an increased Garda presence, and I imagine that will continue.
Well, could definitely continue up to Christmas. Now, Muireann.
Okay, so...
There might be no spuds for Christmas.
Can you explain to us what's happening? This is anathema to Irish people. They're like, sorry, what?
Yeah.
What's
There
going
might be
on?
no spuds for our Christmas dinner.
There may be a shortage of spuds.
Shortage of spuds. Oh.
Between a late planting season because of the rain and then an issue in harvesting because of the rain.
I'll be all right. I'll be all right. I don't mind if I've no mash, but I have to have me roasties.
Yeah.
Have to have me roasties.
I think, Alan, you'll have them. They'll be more expensive.
Oh, probably more
Oh,
expensive.
is that what's happening?
No,
I
is
think
that
that's
what
more-
farmers across the country have struggled to harvest their potatoes because of heavy rain through October and November.
You'll have to be better planned, and they might be a bit more expensive. There will be spuds to be had, Alan. I just think on the last minute, Christmas Eve, you might not get.
What would you have instead of them?
Bit of pasta.
Oh no! With your turkey and ham? No, sorry.
Yeah, you're.
What would you, if you didn't have spuds? What would you have instead of the spuds? A few parsnips, maybe.
No, parsnips there.
Roasted parsnips.
You'd be better off.
roasted parsnips.
You can't replace them and pretend you've got them. You just have to have nothing. You couldn't have roasted parsnips and say, oh, this is instead of my potatoes. They're different things.
Different things. What would you have?
Do you have a suggestion
Do you
for
have a
us?
suggestion?
We don't have any spuds. I'm happy. I don't like spuds.
And maybe
so it's great.
people don't have the spuds with their Christmas dinner. Do you have the spuds with your Christmas dinner? Let us know. Or what would you have as an alternative? We'd love to hear from you. 0896 111 111.
The news is pretty bad. We want to talk about something pointless for a
I
while.
know.
Please.
But we
we'd love
have to
hear from
liven
you.
it up a little bit. Lorcan, thank you so much for
From the
joining me
Communications
this
Clinic,
morning.
thank you so much for joining us. We'll be back with you in Ireland AM in just a minute.
Hello, you're very welcome back now. It's time for the sports roundup from the weekend, and I think we're going to have to start with a bit of Man United and that Garnacho I was telling you about.
Absolutely. I'm Ray Houghton to the core, best bicycle kick of all time,
I think
1994
this is
USA.
up there with it.
Well, let's see. Former Dublin footballer Paddy Andrews and Gavin Cooney from the 42.ie join us this morning. Gavin, is this bicycle kick better than Ray Houghton?
Yeah, it's probably right up there. It's definitely the best we've seen probably in the Premier League. Outrageous by
Come on, we
Garnacho.
actually have a clip of it. Let's take a quick look.
Behind it, Susie kind of went up in the air. I'm usually critical of goalkeepers. I'll let him off for this one. Brilliant goal and a brilliant start from United.
Brilliant start from United. What a hell of a goal. Paddy Andrews, a Man United fan. We've been on here slagging you off a lot. But
It's been hard being a Man United fan recently. Or
When a Leeds fan can slag a Man United fan.
You know it's good when Roy Keane is even praising it. So it was incredible. Like, they've been absolutely diabolical all season. Kind of
Playing
scraping
Everton.
through results.
And weren't great yesterday.
No, and exactly, that kind of glossed over a little bit. But as a moment, we were kind of chatting, obviously, the WhatsApp group, loads of Man United fans and that. I'd say that's definitely in the mix to be their greatest goal in the Premier League ever.
Well, it's probably going to be goal of the season. There's talk of that already.
Yeah.
But like, you talk about Wayne
Even
Rooney's...
Garnacho himself said it.
Did
Probably
he?
goal of the season, maybe. Yeah.
Self-praise. Yeah, why not?
I know, but I think
Why not?
I don't know. Obviously, it reads like self-praise. He was kind of amazed that he scored it as well. He was just like, wow.
I think everyone was. Yeah.
Well, let's talk about, because you say that obviously Eric Ten Hag has been under huge pressure, Man United manager. We have a situation where they're playing Everton, who have gotten this. The Premier League have come down quite hard on Everton in relation to
10
breaking their
points deducted,
rules.
yeah.
10 points deducted, and everyone's looking at Man City going, nothing happening over there. So they were going into this, Everton going, here now.
Yeah, and I thought Man United might struggle in that environment just because it would be like a bear pit, you know, this kind of seething anger of Everton fans beforehand. But obviously all of Everton's plans to kind of to protest against the Premier League and be seen around the world is all forgotten within 2 minutes because we've seen chances. Like, I mean, they could easily have been ahead at half-time, but United, in fairness, in the second half through that Rashford penalty.
Can you explain to me, though, the Everton deduct?
You're allowed to lose a certain amount of money over 3 years when you're running a club in the Premier League, lose £105 million over that time. Everton lost over £120 million. They pretty much agreed that, yes, we lost that money, but they argued over how serious an issue it really was. The Premier League said, you broke the rules, we're docking you 10 points.
I think the key message is, if you're going to break the rules, break them big.
Yeah.
Like Man City, just break everything and just tie them up so much. It'll be 20 years before Man City are actually charged with anything as well. And the other side as well, lads. Like, Man City have great lawyers, I would imagine. They have unlimited budget. I think Everton, in the grand scheme of things, compared to Man City, they can't defend themselves probably as well as that. But if you're going to break
We
the
know
rules...
Wayne Rooney wanted to go back to law school after the Wagner Christie trial.
Yeah. There's money to be made somewhere.
We have to talk about another big occasion at the weekend. It wasn't Leinster beating Munster, but Katie Taylor. Like, it was just momentous. I was at the first fight. Unfortunately, that was a bit of a damp evening, that one. But my goodness, the crowd on Saturday looked unbelievable.
It must be the loudest. I mean, she's fought in Madison Square Garden in front of twice the amount of people, but I think the Three Arena was louder. Chantal Cameron is younger than Katie Taylor. She's stronger than Katie Taylor. She's faster than Katie Taylor. But Katie Taylor is just better. And I think she, Gav Casey on our side said she had to reach deep into her soul to win this, and I'd like that phrase. And Taylor seemed quite furious at everyone who wrote her off because she was the outsider. That was the first real time in her career. Like, she was the absolute outsider.
Because she was so well beaten. Like, Chantal, she cleaned her in that first fight.
Yeah, but Katie Katie admitted after last night or Saturday night's fight that wasn't the best of her. She only didn't really fight that well. So much more.
But she was tactical. It shows the smartness in her play, Paddy. Like, that was it. She knew she had a match plan and she was going.
She learned from her defeat the last time, which is a true sign of a champion as well. Like, Katie Taylor's been praised for decades now. She is one of the greatest sports people we've ever come across. There was a sense on Saturday, if she was beaten, that may be it for Katie Taylor. That alone, you know, Tommy, that can give you an edge to perform, and she did. It was an incredible evening, an incredible event, and it probably plays into, you feel like there's going to be a trilogy. There is going to be a decider. Eddie Hearn, to be fair, on the show last week, it was great to see him. He's pushing to have this in Croke Park. There's going to be a major finale to this, whether it's in Croke Park or not. That will probably be maybe the last bout.
Croke Park, the Aviva, it has to happen. A trilogy. The greatest sports person I think Ireland has ever produced. I think it has to be right up there. Gavin Cooney from 42.ie, Paddy Andrews, great to have you both with us.
Gorgeous Gansey and Paddy this morning. We're all discussing it. We'll be back with you on Ireland AM in just a minute. Is it hand wash?
I don't know. No one knows.
It's time now to take a look at this morning's paper, starting with the Irish Times. Its headline: Gardaí plan large-scale arrests of Dublin riot ringleaders. Senior Gardaí have promised large-scale arrests in the coming weeks as Commissioner Drew Harris and his senior officers are under pressure from the government to make rapid progress in the investigation.
Energy discount war heats up as another firm cuts bills. Competition has returned to the energy market with a cut price electricity rate being announced by a supplier. New player UNO Energy is offering a fixed rate that is 5% cheaper than its previous lower rate. That's the front page of the Irish Independent.
The Examiner leads with facial recognition gets fast track. The government is to fast track and expand controversial new laws to help quell riots and disorder as it deals with the fallout from last week's violence in Dublin.
Similarly, on the Daily Mail, new facial recognition measures to help take on the rioters. Justice Minister Helen McEntee, who has insisted she will not resign despite increased pressure on her to quit, said the new laws will be ready for approval within weeks.
The Mirror goes within safe hands. Irish-Israeli girl Emily Hand, who turned 9 whilst in captivity, ran into Dad Thomas's arms on Saturday night following her release.
It really was beautiful. The Sun also leads with that story. Emily came back to us. The father of freed Hamas hostage Emily Hand has said, "We are overjoyed to embrace Emily again, but at the same time we remember all the hostages who have yet to return."
And the Star covers that story with Safe in her daddy's arms.
And finally, the Herald goes with video shows knife panic in city shop. A video of a man threatening supermarket staff with a knife is being shared online after the riots in Dublin last week. And following on from the riots, a good few texts through.
Yeah, about the facial recognition, which is in a lot of the papers this morning. And Paul says face recognition is needed but can be pointless at times, as we saw in those riots. A lot of people causing havoc, wearing balaclavas, their face covered, baseball caps on. You can't really see who they are. They should have brought it in and said nothing in the media, as the rioters now know, keep your face covered.
Well, now, hold on. Now, we live in a democracy, so you have to tell us what laws you're going to bring in.
Yeah, you have to tell us what laws we bring in. But everybody, they've always done that. If they're rioting in places, they've always their face covered.
But also, people wear balaclavas rioting for decades. It's not a new thing.
Yeah, it's not a new thing. Yeah, exactly.
Paula said, absolutely disgraceful scenes. The guards have a terrible job on their hands. Imagine the families watching their sons and daughters being attacked by the very people who they serve and protect. And that's, I mean, the difficulty for the guards in trying to recruit people nowadays. How difficult is it? You know, who's signing up for those jobs?
Anne says, I was in town on Saturday and it's the first time in years that I felt safe in Dublin city centre, says Anne. There was a visible Garda presence from Grafton Street to O'Connell Street. Why can't we have this all the time? Not just for show. After the fact, the government need to step up and sort it out. And we were talking about that.
Staff.
But then if you're trying to increase the salaries of guards, you have to then look at nurses, teachers and everything, unless you ring fence what you're going to do for Gardaí.
Get in touch with us. We'd love to hear. Were you in Dublin last week? You know, have you a family member? Are you a guard who is involved in this? We would love to get your opinion on things. 0896 111 111.
Yeah. Now, and also we were talking about on the back of a news story that's in the papers this morning that because of the weather, the wet weather over the last couple of months, there could be a shortage of spuds for your Christmas dinner.
Alan's
you
very
might have a spud.
I make good spuds at Christmas.
We haven't told Catherine Layden yet.
And we said, what else would you have if you didn't have your roast potatoes or your potatoes?
You can't have Christmas dinner with no roast potatoes.
That's what I'm saying. But then somebody said, stock up on a few bags of frozen roasties.
Eric said rice. Who's having rice for Christmas dinner? Eric!
But yeah,
people who have rice.
No, I like the idea now. A few bags of frozen roasties.
You could get the waffles and just kind of take the thing off and have the potatoes there, mash it up.
Because someone else is saying replace your mash with croquette potatoes. But they're still potatoes, so surely if there's a shortage, you won't be able to get croquette potatoes.
No. I'm with you, Lucia. I can't really imagine any dinner without spuds, let alone Christmas dinner. Love me spuds. And I'm probably the reason that we're in shortage of them.
Are you a roasties king?
Oh God, I'm good roasties.
They're fatty.
What else?
What's your secret?
What alternative would you have for your Christmas dinner? 0896 111 111 if you couldn't have the spuds.
Rice, Eric. Take a look at yourself.
Hard-hitting stuff this morning on Ireland Day. We'll
coming up after the break, we're going to talk about this because we've got the latest documentary about the 1984 investigation that rocked the nation. Stay with us. You're very welcome back. Now, back in the 80s, the country learned of the shocking death of a newborn baby on the beach in a small town of Carsaveen in County Kerry.
Here to discuss a new documentary that outlines the details of the Kerry baby murder case is investigative journalist Peter Murtagh and journalist with the Kerry Man, Sinead Kelleher. Thank you both so much for being here this morning. We really appreciate it. But before we chat, let's take a look at what we can expect from tonight's episode. It runs for 3 evenings. Here's the baby on the beach.
A newborn baby boy has been found dead near Carsaveen in County Kerry.
Its neck had been broken, stabbed 28 times.
It has always lingered. Who would have given an innocent child multiple stab wounds and left it on a seashore?
That began a chain of events that became one of the most extraordinary and distressing sagas in modern Irish history.
This was the very determined Garda operation, and they were going to catch whoever it was.
Of course, the question is, who killed this baby on the beach?
Now, that is just scenes from tonight. Thank you both so much for being here. Peter, it says there the guards were going to find who was caught. They didn't, because it's still something that is an ongoing investigation. Baby John is at the centre of this. How was he found?
Well, there was a jogger out exercising on the beach early in the morning and came across what was this baby's body. I think they examined, obviously, what they had found, and it subsequently emerged that the unfortunate child had been stabbed, I think it was 28 times. There you go. And so, obviously, it was a crime scene, and the guards had to be involved.
So the body of baby John was discovered.
Yeah.
It obviously became a Garda investigation.
Yeah.
Where did that centre straight away from the go?
From the get-go? Well, initially it was the local guards, but very quickly the guards from Dublin were brought in. At that time, I mean, it's funny looking at that little clip there and you see a bit of a newspaper cutting and it looks like another world. In that time, in the early 1980s and throughout much of the 70s, there was a unit in Garda headquarters in Dublin known as the Murder Squad. And it was a mobile unit. They went around the country. Most of their work was involved with paramilitary activities, subversives, that sort of thing. But they came down into what was clearly a very, very different sort of crime, whatever exactly had happened. But they came down. And I think it's fair to say the local guards were kind of brushed aside.
And who did they focus on?
Well, they focused not unnaturally on trying to find women who were pregnant, who are no longer pregnant, but didn't have a baby to show for the fact that they were no longer pregnant. And you can understand that would have been the focus of their attention.
And that was what it was, Sinead. I think anything that we know about looking back in the Kerry babies case, every single woman was put under this intense sort of a focus as fallen women was used so much at the time, treated as criminals. A whole community of people who'd been pregnant.
I mean, Carsaveen was a very small rural area back then. Nothing like this had ever happened, and every woman in Carsaveen was under the spotlight. I mean, there were young women, there were questioning literally every woman of childbearing age, shall we call it, to see if they were the mother of this baby John.
And it was very much on the women. It wasn't about man. It was like you had.
There was no question of the father at the time. Hardly. It was just entirely who is the mother of this baby John that had been found on the beach. Like there was, say young women that had been away in college or had gone away maybe, and had come back. They questioned them to see if they were the, and it was very, I'm sure many homes that were called to were terrified at the time because they didn't know what was going on, and we had a crime in a small rural community where nothing like this had ever happened. And there was some woman at fault here.
So the Garda murder squad, as you call it, the investigation led them to Joanne Hayes.
Joanne Hayes.
Hayes, sorry. Why her?
Because she presented at the hospital with signs of having given birth but having had no baby. So she presented at University Hospital Kerry, or it wasn't called that back then, and then straight away the guards and the murder squad had, here's someone, at the time, to be fair, a credible person who had no baby but had given birth. From the other side of the county, from the totally opposite end of where the baby had been found, but nonetheless they believed her to be a person of interest in the case almost immediately from that.
It feels awful to still be talking about this woman because of what happened. She's tried to live her life and did nothing. She did nothing wrong, Peter. This is essentially it, and her life has been sort of destroyed, and we're talking about her again now 39 years later. So what happened to her and her family.
Yeah.
They were all arrested. They were all brought into by the guards.
Yeah, in fairness, I don't think her life was destroyed. I think she's a marvellously strong person, Joanne Hayes. But they went into this vortex of horror. The guards descended upon them. They took the whole family into the Garda station. So there was Joanne, there was her 2 sisters. There was, a sister, 2 brothers, and an aunt, Bridie Fuller. And they were taken into a Garda station. And the tactics that Gardaí might use against, let us say, very hardened paramilitary terrorists were applied to this family, who, if the Garda theory was correct, and it wasn't, had been through a traumatic experience. So there was very little sympathy, there was very little understanding, there was very little sort of gently trying to tease out what had happened here. They came in heavy-handed, I would say, and after all of this, the Hayes family described being what was essentially oppressive questioning.
Because they all confess. They had kind of identical confessions.
That's right. They confessed to crimes they could not possibly have committed. Let's get that out there absolutely clearly. But the statements are ludicrous. You know, they're absolutely ludicrous when you read them. They're not the way a normal person talks or describes a situation. They're bizarre.
So what happened then? Because it led to an inquiry.
Yes, it did lead to an inquiry. I mean, what happens then was these, quote, confessions, unquote, led to them being charged with murder, with activities related to the death of this baby. And they appeared in court, I think. And Joanne had said, she had acknowledged in questioning that she had given birth at home and that the baby had not survived. And the guards didn't believe. And she told the guards where she had left the child, and the child had not survived the night. We don't know if it has even survived birth. Might have been stillborn. The guards would not allow her to go out to the farm with them to show where the baby was. So they went out on their own, couldn't find it, they said, came back, and of course this reinforced their notion that here we have a lying woman. So what happened afterwards was that they're charged, so that's now on the public records, they're charged with murder. And of course the DNA shows that Joanne could not possibly have been the mother of the baby on the beach.
And they did eventually find the body of her baby.
They did.
But Joanne had been having an affair with a married man, which of course then put her in the crosshairs of very Catholic Ireland.
Yeah. But the guards also have this problem. They've charged somebody with murder who could not possibly have committed it.
And this, the charges are dropped. This all comes out over in the documentary. The charges are dropped, right? But it leads up to a tribunal because of what the guards did in order to get these confessions. What emerges from that tribunal, Sinead?
Well, the tribunal was initially set up to investigate how the confessions were got, but it turned into a witch hunt, I suppose. It just turned into questioning of Joanne Hayes over days and days of questioning about her personal life, everything about her life. Every single corner of her life was examined and turned, and nothing about what the tribunal was actually about.
Nothing about the guards and their treatment. It was she was just
she was put on trial.
She was put on trial, exactly. Yeah.
Wow. And in the witness box became so distraught that she ran out at times and was vomiting in the toilet, and was so distressed and under such strain. And in fairness to the women of Ireland, as it were, many women came and demonstrated outside that tribunal and protested at the outrageous treatment. And if one is looking back at this, as these documentaries do, you can look back at the guards, but my God, the judge who allowed that tribunal to be conducted in the way it was, it's outrageous.
Absolutely.
Unbelievable.
It is unbelievable.
You'll see it in the documentary tonight, what he allows under the inquiry.
Listen, in 2018, as you mentioned, DNA showed it basically exonerated Joanne Hayes from any connection to the baby. They have then arrested a new family who are believed to be the parents of baby John. Yeah. Where does that stand at the moment?
Well, I think, yes, the parents of the baby on the beach have been identified, but whether they were involved in any crime is another matter altogether, and I think that's probably with the DPP at the moment. But it may well be that that's it. There is no more that can be said or done about this.
It's 39 years later, Sinead. This is something that has been hanging over, I think, an awful lot of people in the community of Carsaveen. in Kerry for a very long time. How do the community feel about all of this?
I think there's a lot of mixed reactions to it. I mean, a lot of people would like to let, as they say, sleeping dogs lie, stop digging up this case that was so hard on the community's time. It doesn't just affect Kerry, it affects every corner of Kerry, but it affects Ireland. It's a portrayal of what Ireland was like back then, and a portrayal of what women were treated like back then. It's what happened to Joanne back then, and we're still really, we've come a long way, and there has been, absolutely Joanne has been vindicated that she told the truth, but there's still questions to be asked. There's still a baby that was murdered that still hasn't been answered, that question.
How is Joanne now?
Well, Joanne has always been protected by the community and remains protected by the community. I mean, she's an amazing woman to have withstood everything that she did. Yeah. And, when she got the apology in 2018, she thanked the people of Abbeydorney back then for their support. And that support has always been there by the people in Abbeydorney and all of Kerry. They look out for her. She's an amazing woman for what she would.
Listen, Sinead Kelleher from the Kerryman, thank you so much for joining us this morning. Peter Murtagh, retired investigative journalist with the Times, Irish Times. Thank you both so much for being here this morning. Of course, the first episode of Murder to the Baby on the Beach, it does kick off tonight at 10:05, right after I'm a Celebrity on Virgin Media and also Virgin Media Player.
And there's lots more still to come on Ireland Day. I'm back with you very shortly.
Good morning. We are baking bread this morning, perfect for pairing with some scrumptious soup to beat those winter chills.
Certainly, and Catherine Layden is here to make a sun-dried tomato and fennel bread.
Exactly.
Good morning to you, darling.
Good morning.
How are you?
Very fennelly.
It's very fennelly. He's eaten it already.
Now,
lovely.
A very simple recipe. Here I have 350 grams, that's 12 ounces of plain flour. To that, I'm going to add, what am I adding next?
That's a good start, isn't it?
Yeah, teaspoonful of sugar.
Oh, sugar goes into it.
You always add sugar to tomatoes to bring out the flavour.
Oh, do you?
Yeah.
Oh, there you go.
Well, okay.
Right. Yeah, there's a surprise for you now.
Do you want me to talk you through the rest of it then? The flour,
the recipe.
The seeds. Now you need.
Now
the
here
seeds.
we have the seeds, exactly. Just the
So
pestle
they're the
and mortar here.
Fennel seeds.
Now, if you don't have one of
wow.
them, it doesn't mean you can't make it. You can use the back of a spoon or something to crunch them.
But the fennel seeds are hard to crush, though, aren't they? Yeah.
Where do you get fennel seeds? In the supermarket?
Supermarket, yeah.
And can you get them in a dried thing or?
No, you just get them like that. You have to squash them.
Oh, always.
Yeah.
All right. Okay.
Now I'm open to correction on that, but I think you're okay. Now,
Yeah.
mix that well first. Well, all you have there is your sugar and your fennel seeds.
Sugar. Wow.
Okay.
Yeah.
Teaspoonful, just a small amount to bring out the flavour.
There's some amount of flour flying around there. Look at that.
Bit dusty.
Dusty. Very dusty there.
Here I have a half pint of milk. Now, so all you do is put the dry ingredients together and the wet ingredients. Half pint of milk. To that, we're going to add our 50 grams, 2 ounces of sun-dried tomatoes.
Why are you putting them in the milk?
The wet and the dry,
you
you
dry,
keep them
It's
together.
all just dry here.
Yeah.
If I toss the tomatoes in there, now the flour would stick to them.
You'd be wrecked.
Right.
Now, see? Now, to that, we're going to add a tablespoonful of oil. And it helps, by the way, if you...
Half a bottle?
No, go way out of that. It helps, by the way, if you use your spoon.
Right.
But use the oil first, and then when you get your tablespoonful of tomato ketchup, it will just glide off the spoon for you.
All right.
Little tip.
Yeah.
Clever.
Oil first.
You're
right?
great for the tips, Catherine. We love the tips.
I'm
right.
telling you. Now, here we have my spoon.
Mix it all up.
I'm just going to combine these together.
Yeah.
And...
I keep threatening to be baking bread at home and I haven't done it. How do you make... What's the secret to kind of keep it nice and soft? Is there anything there?
You have to wrap it in a damp tea towel when you take it out of the oven.
Okay.
A damp tea towel?
Damp tea towel, yeah, because it's very hot. And you turn it upside down, leaving the top of the bread on the table.
Yeah.
So the heat in the form of steam softens the crust for you.
Brilliant. A knife there, Catherine.
Right, okay.
A knife, bread knife.
Just give me a bread knife there. No, I just want to cut a little piece here while we're chatting
While
away.
we're talking.
Okay, so we mix the two of them
together. So now you see we have our ketchup.
Yeah.
Ketchup. You could use ketchup, is what I want to say, instead of the tomato puree. But it's nicer if you use the tomato puree.
All right.
Okay?
All right.
Now, we just mix these ingredients together.
Yeah.
And you get kind of a sloppy mixture.
Yeah.
And that's our bread ready for the oven.
That's it.
And that's it.
Definitely make. I keep threatening to do this and haven't. Would you ever
When
make
you going
bread?
to and Tommy, when are you going to start your sourdough?
Oh, don't
I heard
talk
you
about
talking
the
to
sourdough,
Zarina.
Catherine. Oh, here, Catherine, the thing's cooking. The thing's cooking. It's on fire.
It's got on fire! It's on fire!
not on fire. Stop that, you.
It is on fire.
It's not on fire.
It is, look.
Just a hole in it. How did that happen?
The fire alarm's going to go off.
What are you like that? How did that happen?
Anyway, stop dragging attention to that. Stick that in there, Catherine.
Yeah.
And
pour some soup into your bowls there, Tommy.
yeah, go get the bread out of the thing.
Muireann is having a heart attack. For the second time in a month, I've caused havoc in the kitchen. Alan, we have to stop. Now.
I think you had the hob on.
I had it on there over that one.
All right.
The old induction hob and
No,
catch
that's
you out.
the wrong one. Our soup is freezing cold.
It's not.
If we were having that, if it was in that, it would be roasted.
No, I had it boiling. Oh Lord.
Show us the bacon paper. Catherine, can you look through it? Lovely.
Here, Tommy, would you like
Right,
some
come on,
cold
let's
soup?
try some cold soup here. Thanks very much.
This is not cold. What is
You're
wrong
very
with you
good.
there? I'll shoot you.
There's
Now.
one in the oven as well.
Yes,
isn't
there
it?
is. Now.
So how long does that go in
Spread it-
for? If you had,
About
now, you
40.
had the greaseproof paper in it.
Yeah, it should be greased, really.
Yeah.
45 minutes about. Take out the one you've in there.
Here we go.
I hear-
look at this.
I hear Muireann laughing.
Here we go.
Fabulous. Look at that.
Now.
So,
Now.
with damp tea cloth.
Yep. Well, Lord above.
A burnt tea cloth. Don't be
Here,
putting
here.
it on there, Catherine.
What am I doing?
I want to take out the bread
right.
and turn it upside down in the tea towel. I have the burnt bit kept aside, Alan.
All right, okay.
Okay? Now,
right.
we wrap it in that,
Yeah.
and then we
Okay.
turn it, as I said. I'm afraid to do this
and
now.
just stick it on the hob.
Upside down. Stop that. Upside down. The heat in the form of steam. Here, tip a bit of... Here.
Sorry, Catherine, I'm going to take my soup. Oh,
Do you want a
what's
bit of
the
cream on top of it?
Oh, a little bit
Some
of
cream as well.
Oh,
Lovely.
okay.
Thank you, Catherine. It's gorgeous.
I'm a bit late, but I went to
Yeah.
get my water.
Thank you.
The fire brigade.
There you are. The smoke coming off that as well. Catherine Lane, it is
My
delicious.
pleasure.
Hold on.
You are literally on fire, my love.
Catherine,
on
did you
fire.
make the soup as well?
I did, yeah. Simple recipe. Tin tomatoes, bit of milk, bit of cream. Very simple.
Out of a jar.
Do you know what? The fennel is beautiful on a Catherine.
make a
It's
difference.
gorgeous.
Thank
yeah,
you,
makes a
Tommy.
big difference. Thank you.
Catherine,
Well done.
Catherine, well done.
Now,
Thank you, love.
coming up after the break.
We're not mean to her. The place was going on fire. We have to stop.
Just stop that. You.
We're going to Derek, who's at the tree farm after the break.
Up there's the
Catherine,
fire up
thank
there,
you.
we'll serve in trouble.
Perfect coffee every time. Tassimo sponsors cookery on Ireland AM.
It's okay. Panic over the fire brigade are here.
Nina. Now, Derek is in South County Dublin having a tremendous time.
He is. He's at Anderson Tree Farm all morning helping them to get ready for Christmas.
How are you getting on, Derek?
Yes, guys, we're having great crack up the Dublin Mountains here this morning. Pat, we finally got to you.
Yeah, after years we've been asking you. It's been great though.
We're here.
We're delighted you got here.
And Maria, half the community, in fact, the full community of Glenasmole is up here this morning in the shed.
Pretty much them all now. This is our whole Glenasmole National School, so yeah.
It's great to be here. Anyway, Pat, tell us about the farm itself. You're up and running since the 1680s, I believe. The family's here.
Well, Andersons are here since 1680 or beyond it. We don't know how far back they go. There's no much records. We've only started the trees here about 13 years ago.
And how many acres have you got here now, Pat?
It's about 16, but it's just nearly all on trees, and we just have the little petting zoos, and we have our little goats, we've our llama, we've a lookout point over here that's phenomenal.
It's phenomenal. I've seen shots of it. Now, tell us about Christmas tree farming itself. When does your year begin?
January.
Okay, January. And
We started maintaining the trees in January, then we plant the new ones in February, March. Christy Kavanagh gives us all them and brings them over to us, and we have to nourish them then from then until we get nice people to come up and take them off us.
Yeah.
And they can bring them back then and leave them there, and we get mulch out of them.
Yeah, you recycle them at the end of Christmas.
All the councils have it.
Is it quite labour intensive growing Christmas trees?
Of course it is, yeah. Isn't everything a bit of fun? No one comes to buy a Christmas tree in bad humour, so at the end of the day, it's all fun. I've all my grandchildren here doing it with me, so what else could you be doing?
Yeah, it's great. Maria, you've also got a lovely pet farm here as well.
Yeah, we've gorgeous animals here. We have our pet Dolly, and he's a llama. Then we have
the Dalai Lama. Sorry, it just clicked with me there.
And we have our goat. He was only a baby last year, born Ronaldo. The kids here actually named him, so he's grown up now. But we all get to feed him. Anyone who comes we try and get everyone to give him a little bit of a feed, but he's getting a bit fat.
And like, this is a proper family affair. I kind of came up here this morning thinking it was the Waltons.
That's exactly what
you all get involved, don't you?
Yeah, we do. We all love to get pulled together and just it's about creating a family experience that's not so expensive as well. Like, because everywhere you go with families now, it's all so. Everything's just money, so it's just nice to be able to come up here, have a little experience and create a tradition with your family and pick out your tree.
And there's a lovely charity angle as well this year. Obviously you're raising money for the Gavin Glynn Foundation last year. This year's for Bernardo's.
Yeah, this is for Bernardo's. Last year we had actually a little boy from the school that used Gavin Glynn, so it was really lovely to be able to give them something back.
And you raised over 2,000, I believe.
Yeah, we did, yeah.
What are you aiming for this year?
We're hoping for maybe a little bit more if we can. We have loads of donate. You can donate on our website. So as much as we can for Bernardo's.
We can for a very worthy cause. Now, Pat, we believe the local school are involved here this morning because you have specially selected a tree for them. So you're going to bag the tree for us this morning.
Yeah,
and while you're bagging the tree, we're going to say good morning to the principal and Príomh Ida, Rachel Brown. Good morning to you, Rachel. This is a special morning for the school.
Really exciting. Delighted to be up here picking the Christmas tree, so it's brilliant for them.
Yeah, no, great. And there's great excitement, and this is going to end up in your classroom as well. And also, we were talking to Maria there, lovely charity angle to this as well.
Yes, so all the money will go into Bernardo's, which is brilliant.
All right, so we're going to swing around here. We've got Noah on standby. We're going to pop the tree in here. Look at that. Pat, your dab hand at it. You're only at it 40 years.
Has to be done.
There we go. Rachel, do you want to pop over there now? Collect your tree. That's it. We have it wrapped. We have it ready to go. Pat, where can we find out more online?
You can go to Anderson Christmas Tree Farm. It's on the websites. We have
on the website,
Facebook and Instagram.
All right. So
Maria
for me and
looks
all the
after
gang,
all that.
guys, can we have a big wave, a big cheer?
Thank you.
They have the Christmas tree for the primary school. Back to you in studio. Isn't that great now, Pat?
Thank you.
Sorted.
Thank you very much, Derek. Can you hear us there, Derek? I want Derek to go through that thing.
Tommy's been talking about it since
Can you go through? Can you go through it? Can they put you through it?
What, you want to put me through it?
Yeah.
What? Will I go through it?
Yeah.
Pat, you want to put me through it?
He might go.
Here we go, right here. Put me through it. There we go. I'm ready to go. Wrapped and ready for Christmas. Here, Pat. Pull me up, will you? I'm like an elf on the shelf. Oh, goodness me, the things we do for this show.
That's the Christmas tree that we all want. There you go. Play it to you, Derek.
Tommy's been going on since 7 a.m. He spotted those things. He was like,
Get through that.
Derek's through it. Alan's where with the health and safety.
I was going, oh, health and safety won't be able to do that.
Oh, that was a bit of
So we
crack.
just do
Fair
it
play
live.
to you.
I mean, we had a fire in the studio. Derek's a Christmas
Would you
tree.
go? Are you a real Christmas tree person? Are you? Will you get? Yeah.
Are you? No, I got a lovely one years ago, and I just keep putting it up.
Oh,
Same
really?
one, yeah.
I'm going real Christmas tree this weekend. So fair play. If you are local, do help,
Yeah, and go
help
out
do
and
that.
support your local people who are doing that. Yeah,
Absolutely.
Great.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Derek.
Thank you, Derek.
Oh, I love that. We'll get a
Great
picture of it
early
later.
Christmas present for you now.
The little
Delighted
elf.
with life.
Now, coming up in the next hour, Ireland, we are when life imitates art. Yeah, we're going to find out what it was really like on Squid Games: The Challenge, which is on Netflix right now.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
and we get the latest juice from the jungle, including a recent departure, which has just been announced. So we're going to tell you about that.
And some beautiful budget buys on the catwalk. We'll see you back here very shortly. Welcome back. We're hearing about a whole new side of Tommy Bowie. Tommy Bowie now. For some reason, we were talking about earlier on, there's reports that we could be short of potatoes. And Tommy's like, yeah, but you're like, when you're having a sandwich, you don't want the bread, you just want the filling. You just want the butter.
Well, it's because someone's put in a mess. We're talking about if you can't have your spuds for Christmas Day, what would you have instead?
There might be a shortage because the weather's been so bad. So farmers are saying there might be a shortage, or they will be more expensive.
Yeah, so somebody put in, they'd like loads of, what about Yorkshire puddings? And they were going,
they're just air.
Yeah, I know, but it's the Yorkshire pudding covered in gravy. Is like
the gravy.
But you wouldn't have Yorkshire puddings.
It's a vessel, I just heard in my ear.
It's beef, isn't it, Yorkshire puddings? But you wouldn't have turkey and ham and Yorkshire puddings.
Well, you wouldn't, but if you don't have potatoes, like, you have to make do. We're trying to make our best here.
Yeah, Linda's saying, I totally agree. You can't have Christmas dinner without roast potatoes. Might as well just make a turkey and ham sandwich and have a good cry.
Make loads of roast turnips if you have no spuds.
No, there you go. Roast
they're not the same, though. I think I'd have Yorkshire puddings ahead of roast turnips.
I think I'm with Derek. I nearly prefer the leftover turkey and ham curry on Stephen's Day. We do a casserole.
Oh,
we don't do a curry. Yeah, it's delicious.
What else goes into it?
I don't know, Mum doesn't.
I just love the turkey and ham sandwiches with the extra stuffing. Oh, the stuffing
sandwiches. The stuffing is the first thing to go in our house. We fight over it.
Oh, we make extra.
Oh, yeah.
No, we got to have loads of it.
Yeah.
Love it, love it.
So good.
Yeah, so there you go. Let us know what you think. Yorkshire puds for Christmas dinner?
No, couldn't have that.
I mean, if you've no potatoes, anything covered with a bit of gravy.
We will have potatoes. We will have potatoes, but we were just saying it's interesting to see what people are thinking.
Hard-hitting investigative
We do have a
RNN.
text about the riots as well. We did ask if there's anybody involved in the Guards, and we did have a text saying that her son was on duty on Thursday night, and the whole family were worried sick, and I'm glad that he got out of there and everything okay. Thank you very much for getting in touch.
Indeed. We're back with you on Ireland AM in just a minute.
Creepy, isn't it?
It does seem like Halloween-y a bit, actually.
Christmas decorations in the background.
It's Christmassy. Hello. Now, our next guest, he has exploded in popularity over the last few years with his funny sketches and, of course, his trademark humour.
But maybe explaining the noise. Now, Donegal man Eric Roberts has taken on his biggest challenge yet in Netflix's reality TV show.
Oh, that's what it was.
There it is.
Oh.
Squid Game, The Challenge. Let's take a quick look.
Of life that keeps me alive.
Uh-oh.
You must now pick 2 players to eliminate.
We're in Squid Games. Let's get real. Let's sink these ships.
We are a good team. You're the brightest light in here.
People's true colors are starting to come out.
This is a $4.56 million game.
The money is showing.
There you go.
There's
oh,
you.
there he is. Good morning to you, Eric Roberts. Also
How are you getting on, guys?
Contestant 215, is that right?
PTSD hearing that number back.
So listen, you were taking part of Squid Game, The Challenge. So it's basically a real take on that massive series, Squid Games, that kind of took over Netflix. How did you get picked to be one of the contestants?
So I was contacted last year must have been around June or July time by a casting director who had followed me online and said, I really enjoy your content, I think you should apply for the show. And I kind of did it on a whim, not really thinking much about it. And it was around 6 months of interviews. So it was a lengthy process with casting directors and producers. And it was around December last year then I finally got the nod.
Okay, so much like, were you sitting there going, oh, I'm waiting for Love Island to call, even though I'm a married man. I just want to get to be like, hey, we love how you look, Eric, come on here.
I would have quickly hung up.
Quickly hung up. No, I know, but so this is what they do. What was the interview process like?
So it was just essentially breaking down our personalities, finding out what we would do if we were in the game. But even at this point, I didn't think it was going to be as on a huge scale as it was. You know what I mean? I was just thinking, I was doing it every few weeks, not really thinking much about it. Mm-hmm. And then when I was told that I was actually going to be on it, I realised around 100,000 people have applied for this. I'm down to the last 456. I'm going over to film here in London, and I didn't really know what to expect.
So it was 456 contestants, is that right?
456.
And what was the prize for the one person who came out on top?
So whoever came out on top was $4.56 million. Yeah.
4.56 million.
Yeah, so going over there thinking I could come home a millionaire, that was pretty amazing.
Oh my goodness. So tell us, what was, you just said PTSD there, hearing that back again. Like, what was the experience like?
I mean, I don't think I expected it to be as tough as it was. Like when we arrived the first game, 456, it was a huge room, and the set was just so overwhelming. Like, it was absolutely huge, and we were playing red light, green light, and that game was probably one of the most difficult things I've ever had to do in my life.
So red light, green light, that's a huge big hall. Like, it's an amazing set. This is
This
it.
one here.
Where you have to get from one end of the room to the other without the doll catching you, without you moving.
But what we don't
quite
see,
easy.
What we don't see here is the game actually lasted hours. So it took me around 6 or 7 hours to get across the line, and I finished second. So the people behind me, it took them even
You
more.
were joking me.
Yeah, so that was excruciating that day.
So what, do you have to stay still the whole time?
So you had to freeze for around 30 to 40 minutes at a time, and
What?
if you moved, you were gone. Yeah, that's how long that lasted, but obviously it's edited down for the show. But that was definitely the toughest game I took part in.
40 minutes at a
40
time
minutes
just
at a time.
standing there.
Yeah.
Okay, honestly, I suppose we think we're going to watch this. When you decided to go for this, it's based on a game show where people get killed in a TV series. So it was always going to be harrowing. What's it like having to get up every day? You're in this room with all of these people, like 456 of you at the start. You know people are going to get eliminated. Are there tactics at play?
I mean, you didn't last very long without having a few tactics or a game plan. Very early on, I made the decision that I'm going to keep my head down, because what appeared to me quite early on was the loudest and the people in the room, they were the people everyone wanted to eliminate, because they were the competition. So I very much just wanted to keep my head down and try and get through the games and go out on my own merits, basically, instead of being eliminated in there, because it wasn't just the games, it was the off days that the other contestants could get you out as well. So there was a constant mental and physical battle in there where you were doing the games, trying to get through those, but also you didn't know who to trust when you were in the dorms. So it was constant.
Like, was it different? Like, how long was it, the whole process?
So I can't really say how long I was there, because there's still another few episodes to come out.
Say the winner, how long were they there for?
Around a month.
Oh, a month?
Yeah, around a month of filming.
And are you constantly on? Like, is it like, whenever you're talking about the red light, green light, because everybody knows that game, it lasted, 6 hours? And then you go back to the dorms. So is it constant mind games?
It was constant mind games. We were sleep deprived, we were starved, we were fed plain white rice. Like, I had a newfound appreciation for condiments. The games were totally intense, but probably one of the most difficult things in there was being in a room filled with American people. That was, yeah.
I mean, to be fair, I understand
Yeah, you
your
can only
pain.
imagine the horror.
Yeah, like, I mean, it makes I'm a Celeb get me out of here look easy.
Like a piece of cake. I would happily eat some cow testicles over the couple of weeks I had in there.
So you were mentally drained?
Mentally drained, physically drained. We didn't see daylight at times for 48, 72 hours. We were in this room with just 200 people left to our own devices. And it was just, it was really, really tough. There was the fear of what's coming next, and you didn't know how to mentally prepare for that. You didn't know who to make friends with. Try and make friends with some strong people in case it's a physical game, or some smart people in case it's a mental game. So you were constantly switched on.
It is crazy. Like, people are actually threatening legal action against the producers from it as well. Like, which just shows how difficult it is. Now, and was it just, you were just after getting married to your new wife, Niamh, as well? How did you explain that let's get married and I'm just going to head off here to film a show for a couple of weeks?
Yeah, so we were engaged at the time, and I said, I'm going to go off and try and make some money so we can afford this wedding. And she says, right, okay.
Fair enough.
100%, yeah.
You said 4.56 million. She went, off you go, love.
Yeah, exactly.
I'll be grand without you for a little while. It'll
100%,
be all good with that.
Look at that.
But there was one other Irish person. Look at that gorgeous wedding. There was one other Irish person inside there, and I suppose you always think that you're going to, not that we all get along or anything like that, but that be a bit of downtime, you'd be able to sit down and have a bit of a chat about, I don't know, the GA or something. Was that the case? Or?
So me and Mikey, we found each other after a few days. There was murmurs, there was another Irish person there, but it takes you days on end to meet everyone. Yeah, you had to get around everybody in there. And then from across the room, I saw the big Irish head in him, and I was like, there he is there. And we went over and we had a couple of chats and stuff. But it was funny, we kind of veered away from each other in there. I mean, nearing the end of our experience in there, we did have some chats and we tried to make a few game plans and stuff, but he had his group and I had my group in there.
So who were your group?
So I was friends with a few different groups. So this is the issue with the game, okay? When you come in there and you make your alliance early on, the first 5 episodes are out now. In the second game, I got the umbrella. And I queued up with my entire group of friends to get the umbrella. And they were all eliminated. I was the only one to make it through. So then you have to make a new group of friends.
So you got the umbrella and you managed to get through?
I was one of only 4 people that managed to get through the umbrella, yeah.
That is incredible. Well done to you.
I'm seeing a lot of people talk about the umbrella.
Do you want to explain the umbrella for people who don't know?
So the Dalgona cookies were basically, there was a shape in the cookie and you could get a circle, a triangle, a star, an umbrella. So obviously no one wanted the umbrella.
Yeah,
and this was one of the most dramatic episodes so far of how it transpired that we got this. But I made peace with the fact that I'm probably going home today. No one can do the umbrella. We did it in quadrants. So the first 10 people went, no one did it. The second 10 people went, no one did it. And then I was up and I was one of the first to actually complete it.
And you have to scratch out the umbrella in it it's almost like a biscuit.
It wasn't very glamorous in there. So basically the hack to do it was just spit all over the cookie, get it as soggy as you could, and then cut out the shape. Yeah, so they didn't show very much of that, thank God, because it was me going... Yeah, but I managed to do it.
Was that your tactic or was everybody else
That's what I decided to do. Some people had other tactics where they would lick it and hold it up to the light or just scrape it with the needle, but I just went to town.
Gobbling all over it.
We know you. You are a really genuinely lovely human being.
Thank you very much.
But you're not in control of it. Like when you're doing social media, you're in control of what you edit, what you put out there, right? And then the real Eric Roberts is a complete dope. We're looking at like Nella Rose and I'm a Celebrity right now and how she's being portrayed and you'd be quite worried about her. Were you ever worried about that? Was that in the back of your mind going, sure, they can do whatever they want here?
Absolutely. I mean, you do run the risk of that, but I made the decision that I'm going to go in here and just be entirely myself. And I don't really have an online persona. I am myself online, so I made the decision to do that in there. I was going to be just friendly to everyone, not really be backstabby and just be a familiar face, whereas the people in there were like really manipulative and you didn't know who to trust. And I suppose if you want airtime, that's not really the way to approach it. But I said, rather than make a complete idiot of myself on here, I'm just going to be myself.
It's a global audience.
Absolutely,
And you're there to win it as well.
Well, this was it. I was there to win. I'm a very competitive person, so I made the decision that the way to do this is keep your head down. Don't nominate yourself for challenges. Don't put yourself forward for anything. Be a familiar face. Keep your head down, get through the games, and that's the way I played it.
I don't know if you do too well in The Apprentice now, to be fair with that one. Sorry, keeping the head down.
Nothing wrong with keeping the head down.
What's next? What's listen, I mean, you were a carer, you're now taking over TikTok, you're going off to get involved in these huge Netflix series. It's an exciting time for you.
Absolutely, I'm just really enjoying the process. This year, I feel like I may have peaked too early because this year's just been incredible.
Stop it.
Yeah, but I mean,
that was the wedding and everything.
The wedding and everything and all the opportunities. I have my own slot in Ireland AM now, so you might be seeing me on this couch a little more next year.
Eric Roberts, Netflix in Ireland AM. He's coming back down to earth, big style.
Listen, well, continued success, and we love having you in here.
We love having you here.
Fantastic. And I just cannot believe you stopped before the line on red light, green light.
Well, I got over it. That was the main thing. I got over it.
You did get over the line. Well done.
This is the sort of thing I think you'd like to do because you're so competitive.
I couldn't have stopped.
You wouldn't be fit for Tommy.
You have to watch it. It's on episode 1 as well. Very, very
interesting. Very, very good. And do you know what? You are just genuinely a really nice person. It's lovely to see that on that. Eric Roberts, thank you so much for joining us.
She doesn't say that about me, Eric. Coming up, we've got
Princess.
cozy winter fashion that won't break the bank.
And we're going to get all the juice from the jungle in an I'm a Celeb recap. But there's new news. Someone's left, so we'll talk to you in just a little while about that. Welcome back. Now in Fashion Today, we're learning how to embrace the winter luxury trend without the massive price tag.
Yes, now Rob Condon is here to tell us all about it. Good morning to you,
Good morning.
Hi.
Yes, we are taking a look at winter looks trend, so gold, blacks, greens, all of those trends that are going to have you looking really wintry, luxurious. So from sequins to velvets, that's how you work it into your wardrobe.
Started. Sarah is up
and it's
first.
all available from Swords Pavilions this morning. Sarah joins us.
Little local.
Sarah joins us in this look from River Island. So it's all about velvet vibes with this look, and of course sparkles for the party season. With the blazer, it's a little bit borrowed from the boys, so it has that really slouchy appeal to it, a little bit oversized. But what I love about it is you can see the attention to detail and the tailoring, so at the side of it is nipping you in there at the waistline. So it gives that oversized appeal to it, but still has a great shape at the same time. Lots of wear you're going to be able to get out of this, whether you want to go with the full suit with it, or even this blazer over maybe a black dress, or throwing it with a pair of jeans would work also if you didn't want to go all over kind of that glitter.
The top is real structured, real interesting.
Yes, it is. It's a really structured top. You can see the V to it there, detailing to it. Now this is actually quite a long line top, so it is a little bit of a peplum to it.
Okay.
But we've tucked it into this morning because wearing it with the trousers, it just looks better.
So
but if you're going with maybe skinny jeans, you could definitely leave the top out with that. And then with the suit trousers, they're a high-waisted trousers. You can see the pocket detail into them.
So you can buy them separately?
Yeah, they're all sold as separate. So even if you didn't want to go kind of too much, you could definitely theme these trousers and the top up, and you could change the blazer to it if you wanted to kind of mix and match it a little
the
bit.
sparkle in the shoes
We're
as
all
well.
sparkly this Monday morning.
It's all monochrome, it's great.
And we've gone with the sparkle mule there. Now what I like about these mules is there's lots of straps to them as well, so you're getting a little bit of coverage. It's not too much of an open mule, and then you've got the silver heel to the back of them there.
And then just a little earring.
And then finishing off the look, then we have gone with this disc style earring. So it's a hammered silver earring, a really statement piece just to finish off the look. And I think with the neckline to this, you want to leave it kind of bare, so go with an earring with it.
Dead right. Thank you so much, Sarah.
Gorgeous on you, Sarah. Okay, Ciara's up next.
Yes, and sticking with that really wintry looks trend, we've brought some gold and black in. There's nothing as classic at this time of year as gold and black.
Gorgeous
and we've
coat.
got, it's a beautiful coat. It's available right now at Next. And what I love about this coat is it's a coat that you can dress up or you can dress down. So it's the perfect coat for autumn, winter, and something that you're going to be able to take out season after season. It's a long line black coat. You can see the button detail into it, but because it's quite plain and simple, you're going to get lots of wear out of that. Whether you throw it over a tracksuit for an athleisure wear, or throw it over a dress like this, or even with a pair of denims and a chunky knit, it's going to work in your wardrobe. And quite a good price point as well. Faux pocket detail into it. There's a crossover button to it, but a really great coat
And a
there.
very festive dress.
Yes, we've gone with a statement dress underneath it. This is from Lennon Courtney, a Kilkenny design. So you can see the V-neck line. Yeah, and then it's...
Can we take off the coat and just have a look?
You can see the detailing there to the sleeve detailing. This is a great occasion wear dress for the winter season.
The kimono detail is very cool.
Really nice. Tying in there at the waist, you can see it kind of straps through there. Slight V-neck line to it, and it's all about that sleeve detail, and it is fully lined on the inside as well. But I think this is going to be great for lots of different body shapes as well, because it's tying in at the waist. I think no matter your height, size, it's going to suit you.
Lennon Courtney do make clothes for every single body shape. Fair play to them. We've got a pair of just stilettos.
Yes, finishing it off then with these shoes. So they're a black patent heel. If you don't already have a pair of these in your wardrobe, buy a pair, because they go with so many different things in your wardrobe.
there.
And then matching it back in with the bag, which is available from Kilkenny Design with that gold strap detail. So again, bringing in those gold details that we've done with the necklace as well.
Yeah, you've added a bit of a statement neck piece here.
Yeah, so it's a mix of pearl and gold detail to that necklace there. I think with the V neckline to it, if you're going with a necklace, kind of go with a high necklace. You don't want it too droppy, it won't suit the look.
That's very cool.
Lovely.
Really
Thank
like
you
that.
so much. Thanks, Ciara. Danny's up next.
Danny is with us now, and this is one of my favourite looks this morning. The two pieces with this.
Oh, look at Danny, come on.
Like a Cheshire cat coming out the last few days. She has been knocking it out of the park this one.
Definitely a statement
that
look
is
here.
Danny has no money because she keeps on buying everything that she models in the show.
She's out the back looking at that jumpsuit saying, I love it. So we've got the green jumpsuit, it's full on
The
sequins.
coat is fabulous.
Oh,
Yeah, the
love
coat
it.
is absolutely amazing. What I love about this coat is, thrown this with a pair of leathers, a black top, it's going to work as a statement piece, or throw it over a sequins
That coat's
jumpsuit like
from
this,
Mango.
and you're
Wow.
ready to go.
I want to try that on.
It's beautiful.
It is. It's a really,
absolutely beautiful.
a really cool piece to add to your wardrobe, and it's something that you're going to be able to take out every autumn, winter.
See it for years.
Yes, exactly. And you can throw it on with anything from casual to dressy.
Yeah.
Underneath it then with the
Oh, look at
jumpsuit,
this.
which
Love
is
it.
available from Mango. Full sleeve length to this, V-neck line to it. A little bit of a 70s vibe with it.
Oh, yeah,
but
very
again,
much so.
that kind of metallic green, which brings that kind of luxurious vibe to this look here.
Gorgeous.
Shoes on
And
Danny
the
then.
shoes.
And then
as
finishing
well.
off, we've gone with quite a simple pair of black peep toe straps.
Yeah, and just to keep it simple.
Yeah, because you don't want to
buttons
go,
are just-
too
But then
much.
what you've done here, like
Yes.
the earrings are fabulous
I want
as
these.
well.
Yeah.
You want the earrings.
They're
too.
amazing.
So bringing in that kind of jewel tone with these gold and red earrings is just setting off the look completely. Yeah.
Oh, they're lovely.
Danny, you look
$19.99.
Fabulous.
Yeah.
Those Danny.
Gorgeous look.
Girl, you're gonna
Perfect
have
for the
your
party
wardrobe
season.
must be absolutely crazy at this stage. Thank you so much. That is a
That is
beautiful look.
gorgeous.
Thank
And
you, Danny.
Sarah is
Sarah's
now back
next.
with us.
Sarah is back with us, and we are going wintry whites and sequins with this look. And it's another classic look. It's elegance with this look. First off, we've got the coat. This is available from Vera Moda. I think this is just a really great coat. Yeah, $79.99. You can see the pocket detail into it, button detail. It's a long line coat.
That's a good price for a good winter coat.
Yeah, exactly. And it's going to go with so many different things in your wardrobe. As you can see here, we've really dressed it up with the sequins. I think it's just a really classic Christmas look. With the top underneath it, so we've tucked in this top here, which is available from P&Co. Yeah, it is. It's a little bit longer, so you're getting a little bit of coverage. But I think if you're going with that pencil skirt, just to give it a little bit more shape.
So once again, you can buy the top and the skirt separate.
Yeah, they're all sold as separate. Then with the skirt, it's a pencil skirt, long pencil skirt, high-waisted. Just a really great fit and shape to this skirt. And if you didn't want to go all over sequins, or if you wanted to dress this down a little bit, you could even bring a little bit of knitwear to it, go with a pair of boots, and you could totally dress down the sequins.
Yeah, it'd be lovely.
Yeah,
and
you could dress it down completely.
The colour there, and you've gone gold with the shoes.
Yes, we've gone gold, bringing in the sequins there. Another great pair of shoes. You can see the mesh detail to the side of these shoes. They're available from River Island, but even going with a black pair of skinny jeans with those shoes, they're going to make a statement.
Beautiful shoes.
Yeah, they're a really nice pair of shoes. Yeah,
so cute.
A little bag there with the gold detail, and again, just bringing in that wintry white that we're seeing in the coat there. To finish off the look.
Like a sexy Mrs. Claus, Sarah. That's
there,
who you are today.
And it's all available at Swords Pavilions right now.
I should be popping around today to have a
You
look.
can try on that fur coat.
Try on that fur coat.
Straight out the back. Rob Condon, thank you so much. Lovely of him. I feel very fancy of him Monday morning.
There you go.
Now, coming up next, we've got the latest scoop from our Gossip Girl. All about I'm a Celeb, isn't it?
Lots of gossip after the break.
Talk to you in a minute.
You're very welcome back now. It's been a dramatic first week in the I'm a Celebrity jungle with new arrivals, head-to-head trials, and, well, lots of conflict.
Yes, lots of conflict and some breaking news. Joining us now with the latest drama and more from the world of showbiz is Ali Ryan from Goss.ie. Good morning to Ali. Before we chat to you about the latest breaking news, let's have a look at some of what's been happening on I'm a Celeb.
The bonds are getting stronger by the day here on I'm a Celebrity. Get me out of here! Nella and Sam. The public have decided the person they want to see face fishy business is both of you.
This is fishy business.
Which sea creature gets its name because of its distinctive colouring?
Are you okay, Nella?
No.
Just keep breathing.
Well done.
Like, I don't know much about like boxing. Like, I've heard of you. I've heard of like Floyd Mayweather, George Foreman.
George Foreman.
He's got a great grill too.
Done well off that.
Nigel, you destroyed the economy. That's absolute. Yeah.
Why are we struggling with hospitals then?
Lots of because they don't know what they're talking about.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Hasn't it been such a good series?
I think it's great. But can we start with the breaking news?
Yes, so Grace Dent has left the camp. And it's funny because I think a lot of people thought if anyone was going to leave the camp this season, it would be Jamie Lynn Spears.
Yeah.
But she's actually really calmed down and she's enjoying it now. But Grace has left. So she's best known for being on MasterChef. She is a food critic.
Yeah.
So before she went into the jungle, she had said, I'm used to dining out every night of the week. She said in preparation for the jungle, she was having 5-course meals. Even on the plane over, she like really indulged in what she was eating. So she was like, I'm ready to go, I'm built up. But she'd made it really clear that she felt one of the biggest challenges was going to be the food. That like she likes her home comforts. She's 50 years old. She's very used to a certain lifestyle. And out of the 421 hours of the show that's aired so far, she's only made 21 minutes of it. So she's barely been on it.
She hasn't been saying anything.
No, but then last night they were like, right, you're on the trial. It was live. Those live segments are so funny because people are saying things and reacting. There's no editing. And she just was like,
now, if people
no
watched
response.
last night, she was chosen for a trial.
Yes.
So did she actually leave before the trial?
Yes, she's left before the trial. So Dani has stepped in. She's the one who played Lola on EastEnders.
Yes.
I'm actually delighted that she gets to do a trial now. I was
with
surprised.
Josie, so she'll be doing the trial with Josie.
So I was surprised, to be honest, that Grace was even nominated to the trial because she's barely been on it. But they have changed things this year. They're letting 2 celebs go together. I also feel like Nella, Nick and someone else was out on medical grounds. I think they're trying to pick tasks that Nella can't do because she keeps being put up for the challenges.
I think so. I think Grace said it did say that she's had to leave for medical reasons. I just read there as well.
Medical grounds,
and obviously she's not. The food and the sleep situation is very difficult.
Already on the plane back.
On her flight back.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, you mentioned Nella Rose, of course, that YouTube star. Like, if we're doing a week-long recap, she's been the talk of the opening.
She's been the talk of the jungle and the talk of the town. Yeah, I actually had never heard of her before. So I was really open-minded to her. I just have not liked her at all. She basically started out, first of all, in the very first trial, she was screaming and nothing was going on. And I was like, how is she going to handle this? But I suppose one of the big talking points was she had a bit of a blow-up with Fred. So basically, she had said before that both of her parents had died. And Fred said something like, oh, I'm old enough to be your father.
Because she's 26, he's 50-something.
Which is a normal comment to make, but she went so OTT with it. She was like, I'm never speaking to you again. I will not eat your food. So he's obviously comes from a cooking background. He's the one cooking for everyone. And she was like, I'm not going to eat what you cook. So there was loads of nights where she wasn't eating. Yeah. I'm sure that caused havoc with the producers, that she wasn't having food.
We saw her then as the week went on. She's been getting progressively
more annoying.
Not only more annoying, but actually, like last night, she looked nearly deflated. She looked really deflated.
She said as well, when Jamie Lynn was talking about leaving a few days ago, Nella was like, I would have been right behind her. So I do think she's deflated. She's getting called for all of the challenges, and she's obviously a very fearful person. Like, she's having trouble. She doesn't like heights, she doesn't like spiders. There's all these sort of things going on. But I think people are warming up to maybe a little bit. She has calmed down a small bit. She did have another argument with Nigel, but I feel like the producers knew that was going to happen because obviously he's known for Brexit. So putting her in there, she was like, you're anti-immigrant. There was a big conversation around that.
People don't like you.
The producers don't go in and kind of have a word with them that, listen, you need to be careful.
I'd say they do,
look after them,
because Nella's been quiet enough since that fight.
But she took part in that. We just saw in the clip there, Fishy Business. So she was there with Sam as well.
My favourite. My favourite.
Made in Chelsea. Really?
Sam would hug a shark if he had the opportunity. He loves everyone.
I'd say he's doing everyone's head in the camp, but he's just
you know what, though?
Why?
I'd say
he wants to hug everybody, and he's like a little puppy. But he said he's a huge fan of the show.
Huge fan of Ant and Dec as well.
A huge fan of Ant and Dec, and he doesn't hide it. He's literally going, I love you guys.
And I flew him over for the Gossies one of the years I've met him. He is genuinely like this. He's just like, everything's so good. So that was his first Bush Tucker trial, and he absolutely nailed it. He was brilliant. It was really difficult questions. He took chances. He got loads of them.
Okay.
But Nella just had to stand in water and ask the questions.
Okay, we don't need to go out about Nella anymore. Right.
Come on.
Let's move on. So
get in the show.
Jamie Lynn, obviously Jamie Lynn Spears, Britney's sister. Has she opened up a little bit more about Britney? Have we got a little bit more?
Yeah, she definitely has. And again, I know you're saying I wanted the producers go in. I'm sure they did, because she suddenly is talking about her more. She said they chatted before she went in. She got a bit of an emotional moment where she said that she's never taken anything from Britney, and she knows that they're really, really close because of that. So yeah, she's definitely opened up a bit more, and I think she's finally settled, because she was crying every day. She was like, I miss my kids, I want to go. She told them she wanted to go. She went into the hut and was like, I'm leaving. But then that settled down. So she's calmed down a bit, and I think she got to do a trial during the week. And I think her doing that brought her back, because she came back and she got all of the stars. And she started to feel like, this is why I'm here. So I like to see that turn.
Series.
I'm loving it. And then, of course, we had Nick and Frankie arriving as well. So they've added to it as well.
Frankie Dettori and the boxer.
Yes. But I really hope no one else leaves, because I think, to be fair, no one really understands how tough it is until you're in there. I actually do hope Nella stays. I do actually like her. I hope she does. I think in general, though, you can't imagine how tough it is in there. It's very hard. And your biggest fears are literally put on live TV.
We just had Eric Roberts here talking about the Netflix show and talking about Squid Game, how actually difficult it is, and you don't see that on screen.
And imagine being starving and freezing. And the other night they had to go in because a venomous snake got into the camp. They didn't show it, but it was reported it got in. They had to go in and get the snake out. Imagine going to sleep in a hammock not knowing what animals are around you. It would mess with your head, so to be fair to them.
Let's move on to another bit of showbiz news. Paris Hilton has welcomed her second child.
Yes, so she welcomed a son in 2021 called Phoenix via surrogates. It was all very secretive. No one had any idea she was expecting. Same thing happened again. So she does have a show with Carter called Paris in Love. It's on Peacock TV, which is where the Love Island Games was on. So it's a streamer. So basically they're going to do the whole reveal on there. But she put up a picture on Instagram of a really little cute girl's outfit and the name London. So it's London Marilyn Rayum, I think that's how you pronounce Carter's second name.
Paris and London.
There you go. Nice. Now, Brian, there's a big meaning behind it, but again, she'll probably talk about it in the show, but it's expected to be a surrogate again. She actually talked about it before, she's terrified of giving birth.
Okay.
That's why she's gone with Sergey. And obviously
Cersei.
she's really close to Kim Kardashian. She saw she had a good time, so she got a little bit of backlash because she was
Okay.
like, I just don't want
Very
to.
quickly, Love Island All Stars.
Yes.
It is happening.
This is different from the games that we've seen at the minute.
So the Love Island Games was literally a format where they played games against each other.
Okay.
This is Love Island All Stars. So it's basically the winter series. They're going back to South Africa. Maya is back, but we're going to have some of our all-time favourites. So just to quickly go through some of them. Faye Winter, Faye and Teddy were that couple.
Oh, yeah.
She is
I like
very
Faye, yeah.
fiery.
Yeah.
She recently had a huge fight with Moore Higgins at the NTAs. She'll be brilliant. Paige Thorne, again, she was the one that left with Adam Collard. Chloe Burrows, Chloe and Toby were
These are
really
all
popular.
rumoured now. These are not confirmed.
All rumoured, but I'd say there's a high chance they're going to do. And then Ovi, he's the last one I mentioned.
Oh, I liked Ovi
Everybody
as well.
loves
Yeah.
Ovi. So
Is
I
he the
think
basketballer?
Yes.
We are going to be
I love how
chatting
you're
more-
showing me
we're going to be
basketball.
chatting more
Yeah.
about that. Ali Ryan from Goss.ie, thank you so much.
Thanks very much, Ali. Now, that is all from us here today. Coming up on tomorrow's show, comedian Geroid Farrelly tells us about his new podcast and performing with Joanne McNally.
We have a book review with the best reads to add to your Christmas wish list.
All that plus your daily news, sports, and weather. Ireland AM is, of course, live from 7 a.m. We hope you have a lovely day. Talk
Great day.
tomorrow.
See you
Bye.
tomorrow. Bye-bye.
More basketball. See you later.
Like when you threw Mario Kart.